Long ago, when the gods still intervened in the affairs of mankind, a great war erupted between the Greek heroes and the mighty city of Troy. This war, which lasted for 10 long years, was a tumultuous clash of fate, love, hatred, and loyalty, leaving an indelible mark in Greek mythology. It all began at a grand feast on Mount Olympus, where the gods gathered to celebrate the wedding of Peleus and the sea goddess Thetis. However, the joy was soon shattered when Eris, the goddess of discord, tossed a golden apple with the inscription, "For the fairest." 3 powerful goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, immediately began to fight over the apple. Zeus, the ruler of the gods, did not want to make the judgment himself, so he entrusted Paris, the prince of Troy, with the decision. Paris, swayed by Aphrodite's promise that he would be granted the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, awarded the apple to her. This fateful choice would have far-reaching consequences, as the woman in question was Helen, the wife of Menelaus, the king of Sparta. Not long after, Paris secretly took Helen back to Troy, sparking the wrath of Menelaus. Enraged, he called upon the Greek kings and heroes to launch a war to reclaim Helen and restore his honor. Under the leadership of Agamemnon, Menelaus's brother and the king of Mycenae, a massive fleet gathered at Aulis. Among the warriors were Achilles, the son of the sea goddess Thetis, with strength unmatched by mortals; Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, known for his sharp intellect; and Ajax, a giant of a warrior, famous for his brute force. But the journey to Troy was not without its obstacles. The winds were stilled due to the anger of the goddess Artemis, forcing Agamemnon to sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia, to appease her and gain favorable winds for the fleet. The blood of the young princess soaked into the ground, and the army continued its march toward Troy. When the Greek forces finally landed on the shores of Troy, the battle began. They launched several attacks but were repeatedly halted by the impregnable walls of the city and the courageous leadership of Hector, Troy's greatest warrior. Fierce skirmishes ensued, but neither side gained a decisive advantage. As the years dragged on, the conflict reached a stalemate. Achilles, the wrath of the Greeks, refused to fight after Agamemnon took his prize, the captive Briseis. This provided an opportunity for Troy to counterattack, with Hector leading the charge and pushing the Greeks back. In the absence of Achilles, his close friend Patroclus donned his armor in a desperate attempt to rally the Greek troops. But Hector, ever the valiant warrior, killed Patroclus in single combat. This act of brutality drove Achilles into a rage. Swearing revenge, he returned to the battlefield and killed countless Trojans before finally confronting Hector. The two heroes clashed in an epic duel outside the gates of Troy. Hector, despite his valor and skill, was no match for the divine power of Achilles. When Achilles' spear pierced Hector's heart, Troy was plunged into mourning. But Achilles, consumed by anger, dragged Hector's body around the city walls in an act of humiliation until King Priam, Hector's father, came to beg for the return of his son's body. Moved by the love of a father for his son, Achilles agreed. Following Hector's death, the war continued. But Achilles himself was not invincible. Paris, guided by the god Apollo, struck Achilles in the one vulnerable spot of his body, the heel, bringing the mighty warrior down. Yet, even with Achilles' death, the Greeks still could not breach Troy's great walls. It was then that Odysseus, ever the strategist, devised a daring plan, the giant wooden horse. The Greeks pretended to sail away, leaving behind the horse as a supposed offering of peace. The Trojans, believing the war was over, dragged the horse into their city. As night fell, the Greek soldiers hidden inside the horse emerged and opened the gates of Troy to their comrades. The Greeks surged into the city, setting it ablaze, slaughtering the men and taking the women as slaves. King Priam was killed at the altar, while Queen Hecuba and the daughters of Troy were captured. After 10 long years of resistance, the great city of Troy had fallen. As the first light of dawn broke over the sky, the smoke and ash still lingered over the ruins of Troy. The wails of the survivors echoed through the shattered remains of the city. The Greek warriors, exhausted but victorious, collected their spoils of war and prepared to sail home. Yet fate was not finished with them. The wrath of the gods, Curses and betrayals continued to descend upon the Greek heroes. Odysseus, brilliant as he was, had offended Poseidon, the god of the sea, and as a result, he was doomed to wander the seas for 10 more years, facing countless trials and monsters before finally returning to Ithaca. Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces, was murdered by his wife and her lover upon his return. Ajax, the mighty hero, was driven to madness and eventually took his own life. Menelaus, after many years of wandering, finally returned to Sparta with Helen, but their life together was never the same. The gods' fury was not over. Poseidon's storm sank many of the Greek ships. The survivors were scattered across distant lands, some never to return home. Among the stories that would be passed down through the generations, some heroes like Aeneas would escape Troy to eventually lay the foundation for the Roman Empire. The songs of this war still echo as reminders of the glory, the tragedy, and the cruelty of fate.